Hello, everybody, and welcome to problem 12-5. And let me just take a look at this real quick. Okay, so Montana Mats Golf was formed on July 1st, 2019, when they purchased the Old Master Golf Company. Old Master provides video golf instruction at kiosks and shopping malls. Meg-like plans to integrate the instructional business into his golf equipment and accessory stores. So they paid $770,000 cash at the time. Old Master's balance sheet reported assets of 650 and liabilities of 200. Now again, here I don't care about what was on it. I want to know what the fair value is, because that's what's going to help me determine to have goodwill. So the total fair value of the assets is estimated to be 800,000. However, included in that is going to be the trade name, which had a fair value of 10,000, and a copyright that had a value of 24,000. So the other assets purchased, you're going to kind of work backwards. So the total fair value of the other assets purchased are going to be 766,000. So this is the total. So my total fair value of the assets is going to be 800 grand. Now, when I look at this here, the next thing I need to know is what were my liabilities. And so for my liabilities, I'm going to assume that this over here was 200,000. So the net fair value of the assets acquired is going to be $600,000. This is an important number because this is going to help us determine the amount of goodwill that we're going to be going through and recording. So the amount paid for the business was 770,000. The net fair value of the assets acquired was 600,000. My difference is going to be the goodwill. And my goodwill is going to be here at $170,000. So I'm being asked to prepare the intangible assets section at December 31st, 2019. So for Montana Mats Golf Shop Inc., 12/31/19 intangibles. Okay, I know I'm going to have goodwill. My goodwill is going to be at 170,000. For the copyright, this has a balance of 24,000. However, when I look at this, it has a remaining life of 40 years. So I'm going to be dividing this by 24,000. Okay, divided by 40, or 600 bucks. So this, however, though, is for a full year amortization. So for me to go from, so this is full year amortization on the copyright. So for 2019, right, if this here is a full year, I need to multiply this by 6/12 because I bought the business on 1/1/19 to 12/31/19. So this is going to be 600 times 0.5 or $300. So on my balance sheet, I'm going to be showing the copyright at 24,000 less the amount of the amortization. Okay, so that's the copyright. Now for the trade name, it tells us that it had a, this trade name here had a value of 10,000. Okay, so my trade name had a value of 10,000. We're expecting this to last for, trade name has a remaining life of 5 years, but it can be renewed at a nominal cost indefinitely. And I think that for this one here, in terms of how we're going to go through and record this, what's interesting is that essentially, so the trade name is like a trademark. And if it's telling us that it can be renewed indefinitely at a nominal cost, basically it's never going to go through and amortize. So trade name, no amortization. So there's no amortization for the trade name, which is considered to be an indefinite life intangible asset. That's an interesting question. Might be good for a test. Okay, so prepare the intangible asset section. So this is essentially what it would look like as of December 31st, 2019. So my total intangibles. Okay. So total intangibles here are 203,700. Okay, prepare the journal entry, record amortization expense for 2020. So right over here, what's the difference? So this is going to be, so my Goodwill hasn't changed. This is still going to be at 170,000. My trade name hasn't changed. This is still going to be at 10,000. However, my copyright, I'm now going to take a full year of amortization. So if I were to look at this in terms of the copyright, and if I want to, I can basically show it like this, where I have accumulated So here I can start with 24,000. In 2019, I took 300. In 2020, I need to take a full year, straight line always, or 600. So my total accumulated amortization on the copyright is going to be 900. So my copyright net is going to be $23,100. And I'm just going to say net because we're basically we've taken amortization on it. I'll do the same thing here. Okay. So this is my intangible section for 2020. So that is part B of your question. Okay. So at the end of 2021, Meg-like is evaluating the results of the instructional business. Due to fierce competition from online and television, e.g. the Golf Channel, the Old Master reporting unit has been losing money. Its book value is now $500,000. The fair value of the Old Master reporting unit is $420,000. Meg-like has collected the following information related to the company's intangible assets. So prepare journal entries, if any, to record impairments on Montana Mat's intangible assets. So right over here, if it says the book value is 500,000, what I'm doing is, so this is what I'm carrying everything out on my books is 500,000. The reporting value, or the, excuse me, the fair value is 420. I didn't write this question, by the way. So my loss, or basically my impairment, is going to be $80,000. So what I would have to go through and do for 2021 is I would have Okay. Now, at the same time, too, okay, so this is going to be the first impairment that I have, right? Because I know that my goodwill has been impaired. At the same time, I have my trade names now has a value of 3,000, but my copyrights have a value of fair value of 25,000. So, okay, so let's take a step back on this one for a second. So this is the first part of my impairment loss. I know that it's because of the goodwill. And then for the trade name, so if I look at my copyrights, so my copyright right now, so in 2021, I took another 600 on the copyright of amortization. And so my total accumulated amortization on the copyright so here my copyright net is 22.5. So on the copyright, no impairment. And because the carrying value, or 22,500, is less than the fair value of the copyright of 25,000. So I'm not going to do anything with the copyright, but the trade name is going to be a little bit different. With the trade name, it's on my books here at 10,000. So my carrying value is 10,000. This is greater than the fair value of 3,000. Therefore, what I'm going to need to do is to impair the trade name. So my trade name, I'm going to be crediting this for 7,000, because if I have over here my trade name at a $10,000 carrying value, I'm now saying the fair value is $3,000. So I'm going to have to impair this by $7,000. Okay, so right over here, I'm going to go ahead and impair this trade name by $7,000. And this will also be an impairment loss on the trade name. Okay. And let's see here. If I were to go through and do the MMGI 2021 intangibles, my goodwill value would now be at 170 minus the impairment. My trade name would now be at 10,000 less that 7,000 impairment. And my copyright net would be at 22,500. I know the question did not ask for this, but I'm just kind of doing this just for my own benefit, just to make sure that we've gone through and have done that correctly. Okay, so the only other thing I'm just trying to think here is that, so the book value is now 500,000, and I'm assuming that that does not include any of this, because if it did, that would make this a nightmare, because then we'd have to back these parts out of this. But the way that your book solution is showing it, clearly it's not. So this is really kind of just referring over here to this scene up here, to that amount up there. So that is problem 12-5, and I will see all of you on the next video. Have a great one.